Hello, listeners. It's Gunter Swoboda here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number one in Australia and number five in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda Spigener-Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome back to Inspired Change with Gunter, the podcast where I'd like to explore fresh perspectives on masculinity, personal growth, and social transformation. I'm your host, Gunter, and in today's podcast, I want to take a look at the 5 Pillars of Patriarchy, which is about territory, hierarchy, acquisition, competition, and combativeness. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because I've had a lot of people ask me why I put it into that context. And primarily, the first reason is that we've spoken throughout modern history about patriarchy and what it actually means. But what was missing for me when I took a look at it was the capacity to actually operationalize it. In other words, what makes patriarchy function, tick over? And why has it been so difficult to come up with something that allows men to operate better in the world? So let me come back to the 5 pillars. Fundamentally, they are the foundation of patriarchal systems. And they shape everything from our personal relationships to global power dynamics. Hence, it fits in from the personal to the social. They influence how men are raised, how societies function, and how oppression is actually maintained. But they don't just harm those on the margins. They fundamentally limit all of us, especially us as men, and keeping us men trapped in a rigid, unhealthy set of roles. So today, I'm going to explore how these pillars manifest on both a personal and a social level, how they impact individuals in their daily lives, and how they shape our broader institutions. And most importantly, we'll talk about how we can begin to break free. So let me start with the notion of territory, which is what I call the illusion of ownership. This is about control, and it started off over control of land, over resources, relationships, and ultimately ideas. Patriarchy teaches men to define their worth by what they control, leading to possessiveness, dominance, and exclusion. Let me give you a personal example. Many men are taught to see their partners as an extension of themselves. A man who's constantly checking his partner's phone or dictates who she can spend time with isn't expressing love. He's reinforcing a patriarchal belief and standard that she is his to control. Now, how does that get represented in society? On a larger scale, this territorial mindset is reflected in nationalism and border politics. Nations build walls, restrict migration, and use military force to defend land that was often taken through colonialisation in the first place. So let me give you a very clear example of that in our current geopolitical world. Look at Trump's behaviour with regard to Canada, Mexico, and Greenland. Fundamentally, this all represents his desire for territory. Now, he's got lots of reasons for that, some legitimate, some illegitimate. In fact, I don't think there's any legitimate reason for any of that behaviour. But it is very clearly evident. This fundamentally brings us to the second pillar of patriarchy, which is the pyramid of power. In that there is a belief that the world must be constructed or structured in a way where some people hold power over others. The whole concept of the alpha male is a very, very good example. And then, when you look at the social media sites about how to be an alpha male, there's a huge drive to perpetuate this crazy idea, which doesn't in fact exist. So patriarchy is built on ranking. Men over women, the rich over poor, leaders over followers, alphas over betas. So, in a personal example, there is immediately in that relationship between others the idea that one is better than the other. All right, now we might be better at things, but we're not necessarily better as humans. So the social example of hierarchy is seen in politics and in systemic oppression. Governments maintain hierarchies based on gender, race, and class. Women and marginalised groups are given fewer opportunities, while men, especially wealthy white men, let me refer back to the United States of America at the moment, are handed leadership positions as if it's their birthright. So how do we get free of this? We need to shift from power over to power with. True leadership is not about control, it's about service. Instead of climbing the pyramid, we should work to flatten it, ensuring that all voices are heard and valued. And the companies that have flattened their hierarchies are demonstrably more effective in society as well as economically. So that brings us to the third pillar of patriarchy, which is acquisition. The myth that more means better. The third pillar is the belief that success is measured by how much we accumulate. More money, more possessions, influence, and status. So from the personal, let me illustrate that by saying that many men feel pressure to provide financially, even at the cost of their own well-being. A man working 80 hours a week to afford a bigger house with fancier car may seem successful on the outside, but internally is likely to be exhausted and disconnected from his relationships. So how does that sit in society? Well, let me go to the heart of it. Basically, capitalism thrives on acquisition. The richest 1% of the world hoards resources while billions struggle to afford even basic needs. Advertisements tell us we need more, bigger homes, newer gadgets, luxury brands, but inevitably this never leads to true fulfillment. Instead, we often feel alienated. We compare ourselves to people who have more, so our mental health begins to decline. And this is where the relationship between the social and the personal becomes intrinsically interconnected. Next, competition. The need to win at all costs. So it's not how you play the game, it's that you win which counts. Now, this is the idea that success comes from outperforming others. Whilst some competition can give drive, patriarchal competition is about dominance. It turns everything into a battle. Listen to the current political rhetoric, okay? But let's apply that first to the personal. As most of us, and this now includes men and women, we're really raised to compete in sports, academics, and in dating. A boy who loses a game is told he's weak. A man who isn't the alpha in a group is mocked. And even in friendships, we can see that there's a contest going. Who has the better car, the higher paying job, the more attractive partner? Now extend that into the social. If we go into organizations, the corporate world thrives essentially on ruthless competition. And despite that people in this area talk about diversity means that we have better competition and that's of benefit to everybody, that's actually not what's happening on the ground level. On the ground level, big companies have been merging and acquiring smaller companies almost at a parasitic level. And if we really understand the marketplace, there's about maybe sort of half a dozen to a dozen companies that own most companies in the world. So there really isn't much competition. We pretend there is, but in reality, there isn't. So what that leads to is that companies begin to prioritize profits over people, which lead to layoffs, environmental destruction, and worker exploitation. Instead of ensuring everyone thrives, we are forced into a system where only few are winners. Now, how do we break free of this? Well, we should fundamentally focus on competing with ourselves. It's about me being the best possible human that I can be. Success should not be about beating somebody else. It should be about becoming a better, more fulfilled version of oneself. Now, the fifth pillar is about combativeness, the worship of conflict. And this is a belief that strength is proven through aggression, dominance, and suppression of emotion. Donald Trump has defined the United States as the top predator who takes the right to take what they want. Now, he hasn't exactly said it in those very words, but close enough. He has used the phrase, we are the predator, the top predator. So in that context, at a personal level, being combative means that I have to man up to some sort of masculine ideal, other than that, be shown to be weak. And part of that process is about showing emotions. Showing emotions like sadness or fear or disappointment is seen as unmanly. On a social level, again, let me draw your attention to look at political situations, especially the global political situation. Countries escalate conflicts instead of negotiating. World leaders refuse to admit mistakes or show vulnerability because they fear being seen as weak. This culture of combativeness fuels wars, police brutality, and toxic political discourse, including trade wars. So, my proposition in Making Good Men Great is that we need to move beyond the pillars And we need to focus on our personal growth so that there is a social evolution. So the approach to this is through awareness. Start by recognizing where these pillars show up in your own life and in society. Ask yourself, where am I clinging to control? Where am I afraid to be vulnerable? Spend time reimagining your masculine self. True masculinity isn't about power over others. It's about integrity. It's about compassion. It's about self-awareness, right? The capacity to negotiate in partnerships, especially intimate partnerships, is fundamentally important to the happiness of each of you in that relationship. And we need to be clear, if I, as a man, am using forms of dominance, of control, of coercion, of manipulation, take ownership of it and apologize for it, right? And a particular one is the whole idea of coercive control. When am I using particular forms of emotional or social leverage to get what I want? Another part of this on how to break free and how to replace these pillars is to build new models. Instead of hierarchy, we can build networks of support. We can lift each other up instead of keeping each other on the same rung of the hierarchical ladder. Instead of competition, we can focus on collaboration. We need to move outside the zero-sum game. We can work this on a social level where all of us can have a fair piece of the pie. That comes through collaboration, cooperation. And instead of combativeness, we can cultivate resilience through peace. And the first step to change is, as always, awareness. And the next step is action. So that's it for today. I hope this conversation resonates with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And let's keep building a future where masculinity is not about domination, but about connection and authenticity. And that takes all of us to take ownership in that of our problem in the issue, but also what is it that we can bring to the table that presents the solution to the problem. Until next time, let me encourage you to keep questioning, keep growing, and keep inspiring change. This is me, signing off till next time. Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.